The New York Giants' 34-10 win over the Las Vegas Raiders looks on the surface like a routine late-season result between two struggling teams. In reality, it may end up being one of the most consequential games of the 2025 NFL season, not because of what it meant for New York, but because of what it did for Las Vegas. With this loss, the Raiders are no longer just a bad team having a bad year. They are now positioned to control the top of the 2026 NFL draft. And with that comes enormous pressure, risk, and opportunity. This game crystallized everything that has gone wrong for the Raiders this season. It wasn't just that they lost, it was how they lost, who they lost to, and what the loss represents. Against a Giants team that had dropped 9 straight games and entered Sunday desperate simply to stop the bleeding, Las Vegas looked disorganized, overmatched, and mentally exhausted. The result pushed the Raiders into rare territory in franchise history, tying the most losses they've ever suffered in a single season and placing them squarely on track for the #1 overall pick. From the opening quarter, the contrast between the two teams was striking. The Giants played with structure and intent. The Raiders played like a team waiting for the season to end. New York quarterback Jackson Dart was efficient, calm, and in control. He didn't overwhelm the game with explosive throws, but he consistently made the correct decisions, extended plays with his legs, and punished Las Vegas when lanes opened up. His 2 rushing touchdowns weren't just highlights. They were symptoms of a defense that lacked discipline and struggled with basic containment. Dart's performance matters beyond the box score. For the Giants, this game reinforced the idea that they may already have a viable quarterback option on the roster. He completed over 70% of his passes, distributed the ball effectively, and avoided the type of mistakes that can sink a young quarterback. He didn't need to be spectacular. He just needed to be functional, and against the Raiders, that was more than enough. Las Vegas, meanwhile, once again found itself undone by self-inflicted damage. Geno Smith's stat line was not catastrophic on paper, but it told only part of the story. His 2 interceptions came at moments when the Raiders were trying to stabilize the game, and the second one directly preceded the injury that ended his day. The image of Smith getting his leg twisted awkwardly while chasing down a defender after an interception was painfully symbolic of his season. Overextended, exposed, and paying the price for circumstances spiraling beyond his control. Smith's injury further underscores the Raiders' quarterback crisis. Even before Sunday, there was little doubt that Las Vegas would be searching for a new long-term answer under center. Smith was never meant to be that solution. He was a bridge, a stopgap, a hope that competence might buy time. Instead, the bridge collapsed. The Raiders' offense lacks explosiveness, rhythm, and identity, and without elite quarterback play, those deficiencies are magnified every week. What separates this loss from the Raiders' many others is the clarity it brings. With 1 game remaining, Las Vegas now controls the race for the #1 overall pick. There are no complicated tiebreakers to navigate if they lose again. There is no ambiguity. 1 more defeat, and the Raiders will be on the clock in April, holding the most powerful asset in the league. That reality reframes everything. The Raiders' decision to place Max Crosby and Brock Bowers on injured reserve now reads less like caution and more like strategy. These are foundational players, the types of stars teams build around, not sacrifice for meaningless late-season wins. By shutting them down, the Raiders signaled quietly but unmistakably that their focus has shifted from salvaging pride to securing position. The contrast with the Giants could not be sharper. New York entered this game theoretically incentivized to lose. A defeat would have strengthened their grip on the top pick. Instead, they played hard, executed well, and won decisively. That tells you something about where each franchise stands psychologically. The Giants, flawed as they are, still believe in the process they're building. The Raiders are tearing theirs down. The importance of the #1 pick for Las Vegas cannot be overstated. This is not a team deciding between luxury upgrades. This is a franchise in need of a reset. Quarterback is the obvious priority, but it's not the only one. The offensive line struggles to protect. The defense, without Crosby, lacks teeth. The roster as a whole feels thin, aging, and short on blue-chip talent. Holding the first pick gives the Raiders options, and options are everything. They can select a quarterback they believe can define the next decade. They can trade the pick for a king's ransom, stockpiling assets and accelerating a full rebuild. Or they can make the kind of mistake that has haunted them before. That history matters. The last time the Raiders held the number 1 overall pick, they selected Jamarcus Russell. That choice didn't just fail. It crippled the franchise for years. It became a cautionary tale, a symbol of poor evaluation and organizational dysfunction. Any decision made at the top of the 2026 draft will be judged through that lens, fairly or not. That's why this position is both a gift and a test. The Raiders are being handed a rare chance to redefine themselves, but doing so requires competence at every level: scouting, coaching, player development, and leadership. Simply drafting a quarterback first overall does not fix a franchise. It only works if the environment around that player supports growth and accountability. Sunday's game also highlighted another uncomfortable truth. The gap between the Raiders and functional NFL teams is widening. The Giants are not contenders. They are rebuilding, inconsistent, and limited. Yet against Las Vegas, they looked prepared, confident, and cohesive. That disparity should concern anyone associated with the Raiders organization. Special teams mistakes, defensive lapses, and mental errors continue to plague Las Vegas. Deonte Banks' 95-yard kick return touchdown wasn't just a momentum swing, it was an indictment of focus and effort. Those plays don't happen to teams that are locked in. They happen to teams that are unraveling. As the Raiders prepare to close the season against Kansas City, the irony is unavoidable. For years, games against the Chiefs defined Las Vegas's aspirations. Now, that final matchup represents something very different. A loss would all but secure the top pick. A win, while emotionally satisfying, could complicate the rebuild and potentially cost the franchise its most valuable opportunity in decades. This is the uncomfortable reality of modern NFL rebuilding. Fans don't root for losses, but organizations sometimes benefit from them. The Raiders didn't enter the season trying to be the worst team in football. But now that they are here, the smartest move is to accept it, learn from it, and use it as a launching point rather than a grave. The Giants will move on, encouraged by a young quarterback's steady performance and a rare feel-good win. The Raiders move forward with far heavier questions. Who is the next quarterback? Who is leading this rebuild? And can this organization finally get it right when everything is on the line? The loss to New York was decisive, humiliating, and painful. But it may also be the moment the Raiders' future truly began to take shape. With the number 1 overall pick within reach, Las Vegas now holds possibility instead of illusion. What they do with it will define the franchise for years to come. The Las Vegas Raiders' 34-10 loss to the New York Giants was more than just another defeat in a lost season. It was the clearest confirmation yet that the Raiders are on the brink of owning the future of the NFL draft, specifically the number 1 overall pick in 2026. At 2-14 with 1 game remaining, Las Vegas now controls its own destiny at the bottom of the league. 1 more loss, and they will officially be on the clock. This game carried rare stakes for 2 franchises that have spent much of the season buried in irrelevance. Both the Raiders and Giants entered the matchup tied for the league's worst record. The Giants, ironically, could have secured the first pick with a loss. Instead, they dominated, handing that opportunity to Las Vegas and exposing just how far the Raiders have fallen. What followed was not a competitive battle between struggling teams, but a revealing display of dysfunction, roster erosion, and long-term desperation on the Raiders' sideline. From the opening moments, Las Vegas looked like a team playing out the string. Geno Smith, already battered and bruised from a punishing season behind a leaky offensive line, opened the game with a careless interception. That mistake immediately set the tone. The Giants converted the short field into points, and the Raiders never truly recovered. Execution errors, soft coverage, and a lack of urgency defined the afternoon. Even when Las Vegas briefly showed signs of competence, those moments were instantly erased by breakdowns in discipline and effort. The Giants built a comfortable lead without needing to be spectacular. They simply avoided catastrophic mistakes and let the Raiders self-destruct. A methodical offense, opportunistic defense, and a special teams touchdown after a Raiders score pushed the game firmly out of reach. By halftime, a Giants team that had every incentive to lose was in full